bent E3D Obsidians, calibration cubes not lining up with each other, and 1 hour prints that took 67 hours. All this and more, PrintFixFriday, episode 49. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to YouTube's longest weekly print fail fix video series. If you like this kind of thing where we take a look at fails and fix them, make sure to leave a like and get subscribed. And of course, you can submit your own fails to us on social media, or you can even use the email that we have available through YouTube. Send us your fails. We'd love to give you a shout out and talk about it, because you never know, they're going to help other people. We're going to start off with what is probably one of the most painful fails out there, and it is the gorgeous E3D Revo Obsidian that Mr. Proper Printing has decided needs to be a little bit bent. After that, we move into a mini print, but it's being done in FDM. We're having a few issues. From there, we move into calibration cubes that aren't the right size, and there's some stuff to talk about there. There's quite a few things that are going on. From there, we have a blob of doom that decided it's gonna be nice to you. You know, you're lucky. After that, we have a print that was supposed to apparently take just over an hour, but took 67. I'm calling we have some things that we have to talk about there. From there, we have a user with an MK3S that's wondering what spare parts to order from AliExpress. The answer is probably what you think it is. After that, we have a fan submission from our own Discord where we have a mini that was throwing some failures. From there, another fail coming from Facebook, again from one of our awesome Patreon members who's having an issue with a temp gun not reading the right temperature that it should. There's a reason for that. I think you'll enjoy it. After that, we got NERO 3D trying to print ULTEM on one of his Vorons, and it doesn't go so well. NERO's pretty awesome. He answered it for me. I like that. But you know what isn't crazy overheated? Our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. It might be 82 degrees in my office, but I am not yet overheated. It's actually quite cool considering all the machines that we have running right now. But if you want to get your parts ran by the experts over at 3D Musketeers, you can hit us up. Links will be in that description down below. And we would love to get your support over on Patreon or YouTube channel members by clicking that link in the description as well. Greatly appreciate it. And tier start as low as $1 to help the channel grow and help us be able to afford to make these videos, because the business case is not great for YouTube. We're gonna have a podcast coming up about that. And, you know, if you don't have any cash to spare, like and subscribe and a share goes a long way to helping the channel grow. I'm trying to keep these CTAs to be real short, so let's get into those fails and fixing them. First up, and honestly, one of the most terrible fails that I've seen in a long time, we've got my buddy John over at Proper Printing with a bent Revo. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not any ordinary Revo nozzle. See, it's got a black tip, and for those that don't know, black tip Revo nozzles are Obsidian. Some of us have them. We've been testing them, and video coming soon, of course. But this sucks because you can't buy these. Not yet, at least. Coming soon, TM, or so I'm told. This sucks. And his title of Fuck Me. Yeah. Yep. Now, interestingly, this is kind of the downside of the Revo system. He can't just replace the heat break. He has to replace the whole nozzle. But I'm told if you're nice to it and you try very, very carefully, you could bend it back. Now, we'll never be dead perfect, so you'll have to go back and redo things like Z offsets and all of that. And it might not thread and unthread very easily, and it's certainly going to be different than your other nozzles. But the Obsidian is viably a nozzle you'll never have to change. And that one's the 0.6. It's blue. That's how you know. That just sucks, man. And apparently it's only gotten worse. That's pretty bad. It was on him though. It's not like it was a freak accident. It was something that he did. And this kind of stuff just happens sometimes. There's not much we can do to solve it. He said he was printing PETG with carbon fiber, and the holder he made was a bit flimsy. It dug itself into the print, and together with the force of the Optimus printer caused this. Sorry at E3D. That is never ever easy. There's no easy way to fix this. Yeah, I mean, go ahead and try to bend it back. I might look at using a little bit of heat to do that, just to try to not kink it. But you got to be careful because I don't know what the Obsidian material is made out of. E3D is not being public about this, at least right now. And I don't know if it would be annealed for some reason. So, you know, be careful. But it's like Tommy Boy and chicken wings. You got nothing to lose. So why not try it?
If we didn't get the wings, so what? We still got that meat lover's pizza in the trunk.
But yeah, a bit of a sandwich on this one, and you gotta eat it. You can try to fix it, but ultimately, the internet doesn't forget. Sorry, John. Troubleshoot help with FDM printing. Printing at 0.08 height, this one didn't need support, but I was tweaking support connections and wanted to compare. But my prints are getting that weird stringy bit. Anyone know what I'm doing wrong besides FDM printing minis? This is normally caused from inadequate retraction. We've talked about this on the channel before many times in the PrintFix series, and you really do have to dial this in. 0.08 millimeter is a very, very fine layer height. In fact, I've only ever printed it on FDM once. That's higher than that. This is 0.05. You can see to the camera, it is absolutely, positively smooth because it basically feels smooth. It's crazy how high detail 0.4 millimeter nozzles can get. And if you want to know why we did that, go check out our previous video on PreSlicer 2.5.0 Beta 1. It really does kind of change my opinion on slicing and what companies need to be focused on. So go take a look at that. But this particular one, yeah, FDM printing minis is tough, especially with Bowden printers. Now, we don't know what printer it is, but it is that carborundum build plate that you get from Creality, so I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and say it's a Creality. Now, what can we do to solve this, right? If you like it, then you should put a brim on it, always, right? If it's something that's got a tiny base, maybe it's got tall, fine objects that you're printing, if you like it, then you should put a brim on it. Then we should be looking at tuning our retractions. So run some retraction tests. You can do 2 cubes with some distance in between them just to see what happens. If you get some stringing going back and forth, you have a few different options that it could be. 1, retraction settings. They might not be high enough and things aren't working out great. 2, temperature. Your temperature might be too high, causing the nozzle to ooze. 3, and in this particular case, it's not that, but fine, potentially wet filament, especially when you look at PETG. As it gets a little bit moist, it tends to string a little bit, but nothing that a tiny kitchen torch doesn't take care of. Minis are difficult in FDM, I'm not gonna lie, and you're not gonna get anywhere near the quality that you're going to get out of resin. And in fact, I don't think you're gonna get the strength that you will out of resin. Resin is very brittle, and of course, resin is toxic. I mean, come on, what were you expecting? FDM is really weak in the Z-axis, and especially when you're trying to print fine details, you can really lose a lot of your strength simply because of the way that it's printed. So yeah, I might recommend going to get a resin printer or outsourcing to a company like 3D Musketeers. We can help you make those resin minis as often as you need. Next up, we got a fan submission from Stephen Phillips. He's asking, while doing some test prints to dial in my extrusion multiplier, I noticed 3 of the 4 of my printers are having inconsistent extrusion despite using the same filament and print file. Prusa Mark 3S, atomic filament PETG perfect blue, nozzle at 270, it's a little hot, bed at 70C, and in spiral vase mode. We definitely have some size inconsistencies here. I wanted to point this out. I did reply directly on Twitter, but this is a case of stop messing around with your extrusion multiplier. It's not going to help you. You have a steps per millimeter problem. Not only do you need to look at what your extruder is pushing, but you need to look at what your actual steps per millimeter on your axes are. And you need to measure this. You need to start doing calibration cubes, either 20 millimeter or 40 millimeter. Might I recommend this wonderful cube by my buddy Maker Viking? Link to that one down below for you. But you got to get your calibration cubes in. Then you can mess around with extrusion multiplier, because I'm seeing difference in physical XY sizes. If we do have inconsistent extrusion, which it appears that we definitely have some, 270C is likely a factor here, but we do want to look at just making sure the extrusion multipliers are actually correct and making sure that the steps per millimeter on the extruder are correct. So we've talked about this before. Measure 100 millimeters past the entrance to the extruder, tell the printer to extrude 100 millimeters, and measure how much filament is either sticking out, or take a guess as to how much is actually gone in. You want that line to be right at the edge of your extruder. Bottom of that line should be at the top of your extruder, and if you did it all right, you should be good to go. There are calculators online. If I can find one, we'll link it in the description for you guys, but I would start there in a case like this. You want to make sure that all of your printers are basically printing on the same playing field. I do think 270 is a little hot for PETG. Normally, especially atomic PETG, we can do it right around 240 to 250 without any issues. 270 seems a little spicy, especially for a Mark 3S, so take a look at that. Next up, we got buddy of mine, an LTMW, or Never Let the Machines Win. Check them out. We'll link to them in the description, like we always do. Checking the Wise Cam on a Friday morning, they got themselves a bit of a waffle, and they got really lucky. The printer is completely unscathed. It didn't stick to the bed, and it didn't stick to the hot end. Now, I'm not noticing a heater sock. This is a Prusa Mini. For those that don't know what they're looking at, this is a Prusa Mini, and I don't see a heater sock on here, so I think they got really lucky. Now, I do see some filament that is built up around the block, so potentially it had created a blob, and the blob itself just went ahead and fell off. Again, we've talked about this in the past, that heater socks are cheap insurance. They're completely replaceable, and they can save you. Now, sometimes your printers do take mercy upon your soul, unlike last week where Karen, of course, was struggling with her Mini, and LTMW, or Never Let the Machines Win, got lucky. Take that as a win, as far as I'm concerned. 67 hours to print. I printed this for a customer and told them it was just over an hour of print time. I don't know what world you live in, but there's no chance, not even on the fastest printers out there. I started the print and went to my day job. I got home 13 hours later and it was barely 10% complete. 20 millimeters per second is really slow. Yes, it is. Think about that. In 20 millimeters, that is less than an inch per second. That is nothing. The printers behind me are running at about 60 to 65, which is slow for Prusas, but for Enders, that's about where you want to run them if you're going to start pushing your speed limits. But even if you went as far to the max as possible with your layer heights, as far to the max as you could with speed, you will never print that in under an hour. Not a snowball's chance in hell. So I don't know what is wrong with the settings. I'm assuming there are some issues specifically with the acceleration, or just you don't know how to estimate. But any slicer that you're using should tell you the print time estimate, whether it's Cura, Prusa Slicer, Super Slicer, whatever. We did a rundown of the slicers. We'll card to that playlist so you guys can take a look if you want to see it. But I just don't understand how someone would think that this is an hour. So check your slicers. They don't lie to you. If it says 67 hours, chances are it's gonna be pretty close to 67 hours. Don't say, I know my machines. You probably don't. And unless you really are doing some trickery and the slicer isn't taking into account your acceleration and deceleration speeds, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, hopefully you didn't lose a ton of money on this. And if you did, hey, it's a lesson and it is what it is. If it's just under an hour of print time, I would hope that you're charging somewhere in the range of like 10, 15 bucks for this, which means you still made money. So call this a lesson, call this a good lesson, and hopefully not an expensive one. It's about business, baby. And we talked about this in a previous podcast, actually the one from last week. We'll card to it. It was a solo episode, but I talk about some more of the business side. It seems like you guys really want to, so we're gonna try to get more business guests coming on to talk about not only cool tech, but the businesses behind it. So I'm excited. Get subscribed, please. I think you guys will enjoy it. Oh, boy, howdy. I want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. This one comes from my buddy Aaron, who likes to troll Facebook for these kind of shit posts just like this. For anyone who has a Mark 3S Plus, what spare parts do you typically order from AliExpress? None. The answer is none, because you just bought a good printer. Stop buying cheap shit from AliExpress. Go buy quality components. Go buy it from E3D. Go buy it from E3D on Amazon. Go buy it direct from Prusa. And realistically, don't be an idiot and you won't need spare parts. The printers just work. And if you haven't had a chance to use a Prusa, don't start buying a bunch of spare parts for it. You generally don't need it. Now, I will say, spare PTFE tubes are always good to have. I order them with the printers. It's also good to have spare nozzles, just in case you clog one. It's sometimes easier just to replace it than it is to try to unclog it. And really, that's about it. And that's just basic printer maintenance. Oh, and some socks. Definitely get some heater socks. Those do not come with the Mark 3S. So make sure you do get those. But like otherwise, literally nothing. So if you did want to order some socks from AliExpress, fine. They're not objectively that much worse than the ones direct from E3D, but make that decision yourself, I guess. Next up, another submission from our Discord from Omaha 3D Prints. Here's one that took forever to figure out. That grinding noise right at the end of the self-tramming process sounds lovely, doesn't it? Basically, the printer starts to skip steps. I could show you guys the video, but it happens like half a second before the video cuts out, so it's fine. Trust me. The y-axis fails, it's self-test. Now, if you're reading ahead, you'll know exactly what the issue is, but I absolutely called it. The cables were getting in the way. I had this happen with one of my minis where the cables folded under, and as the printer was going back, it was pulling toward the edge of the cables, causing it to become stuck. You don't want that. This is why we are very conscious about making sure that all of your wires are properly managed, because if they're not, you're gonna have a bad time. Don't do that. Now, thankfully, this one's pretty easy. Just get the wires out of the way and life is good. And because it's a Prusa, it's fine. Again, another submission from our Patreon Discord. Links, of course, in that description. Again, from Aaron, needs some help. I heat up my hot end to 220. I use a temp gun on it. Temperature reads 160. But the display says it's 220. What could be the problem? Why? Listen to the printer. Seriously. And if you don't trust the printer, go get your own K-type thermocouple and put it on the heat block. It's fine. Your printers are accurate. Your heat gun sucks. And especially if you're putting the heat gun onto a silicone sock or a hot end with no sock on it, so it's bare metal. Both of those are bad for the heat gun. If it's bare metal, it's going to reflect and you're not going to get a lot of that heat transfer back into where it needs to be so the heat gun can measure it. And if it's silicone, you have the silicone heater sock, that's going to insulate the heat from the exterior environment. So again, the temp gun's going to read low. Don't use temp guns to measure your temperature of your 3D printers. That's how you solve this problem. Moving on. Sometimes I love being a content creator in this space. I messaged NERO right before I started this video to say that multiple people sent me a clip of his fail with ULTEM. And he said, yeah, totally, you can show it off. There's a couple of more photos for you. And he said, it's all fixed now. The issue was the Mosquito is a wide heater block, and on the afterburner, this tool head, it's since been replaced with the stealth burner tool head on Vorons. The two screws that hold the hot end holding the assembly are exposed underneath near the hot end block. So the heat transferred into the screws, which transferred into the set screws in the carriage, and it all just got hot, melty, and fell apart. Now, this was not an issue normally, but at 380C on the nozzle, it apparently is. So for those of you that are wondering what the hell's going on, I got a clip.
It has not lifted yet.
We got it wiggling here.
It's the camera.
We got it wiggling. And this, for those who don't know, this is NERO trying to print ULTEM.
This is what happens when you try to print stuff on a machine that's not meant to print it. And we're just having fun. Like, if anyone here is taking this super seriously and you have a notepad out and you're taking down notes on how to print ULTEM on your Voron, you're doing it wrong.
Thank you. Thank you. Uh-oh.
Speaking of doing it wrong.
Speaking of doing it wrong. Oh boy. That's a ripperoonie right there, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, that is KO for sure. And I do kind of love being a content creator in this industry because I was able to DM NERO and I got a response back instantly, but we got lots of Fs in the chat. And he is printing off ULTEM. ULTEM is realistically one of the hardest materials to print with on a 3D printer. I actually have some here. ULTEM is also very expensive. ULTEM runs about $600 a kilogram. Here's why. ULTEM is completely and utterly fire retardant. It is certified for flight by the FAA and is incredibly expensive, about $600 a kilogram. This is a propane torch. It is not MAP gas, it's propane, so we're only dealing with maybe about 1,000 degrees. But 1,000 degrees is pretty damn hot. Instantly. Like, one more time. It just instantly carbonizes and turns into a little black turd. By the way, that's like $4 in ULTEM I just set on fire. So yeah, this stuff's crazy expensive. I don't have any printers that can actually print it, and I'm not going to try to print it on other machines. But that's the beauty of ULTEM. It's completely carbonized, but that's also why it's incredibly expensive. The thing with ULTEM that people won't tell you is that it requires an assload of temperature. So let's go to 3DX Tech, who we get all of our exotics from, and well, let's look up ULTEM 9085. Oh, and by the way, ULTEM is the street name for polyether imide, PEI, otherwise known as the material on your Prusa beds. That's why it's pretty amazing stuff. So here's 9085. 1 kilogram. Oh wow, it's gone down in price. Look at that, 220 bucks a kilo. Nice. That's real cheap. That's cheaper than it used to be. You're looking at extruder temps between 350 and 380, bed temps between 140 and 160, and a heated chamber is recommended. Now, you normally want your heated chamber to be at least 75 to 85 degrees centigrade, preferably over 100 if you can do it. You don't need special nozzles. You do need some nanopolymer adhesive from Vision Miner, and it needs to be very dry. And look at that, 120 C. It's like one of the few materials that could actually just dry in an actual oven without any issues whatsoever. But you can see that it is certified for flight, and it is an incredibly complicated material to actually print. And oh yeah, you should anneal it when you're done. There's a whole process to actually annealing it. ULTEM does come in other forms. It comes in 1010, as well as some carbon fiber and glass fiber and all that. 1010 is more of the clear ULTEM that people are used to, and it does have a higher glass transition temperature of 217 degrees centigrade, whereas 9085 is 185 degrees centigrade. Think about that. It is 100 degrees centigrade higher for glass transition temperature than PETG. 85 degrees centigrade hotter than ABS. It gets really hot before it starts to deform. And yes, it is still 100% fire retardant. So, is this a smart idea? No, it's not. And NERO himself said that. It's not a smart idea. He was literally doing it for fun, and I absolutely say go have fun. But some of these failures can suck. They can cost you a little bit, especially because how expensive ULTEM is as a material. I mean, it's gone down quite a bit from my understanding, so I'll take it. But at least a year ago, it was considerably more expensive. But yeah, that's a fun one, to say the least. Let me know what you guys think of the fails down in the comments below. The one that hurts me the most is this one. And honestly, the one with NERO, I dig. I like it because he's real, he's honest, and you know what? Pretty good guy. Would recommend. NERO, podcast soon. Figure out a weekend that works for you. Sundays are apparently doing better for the podcast, so if you see this, slide into my DMs. That's all I have for you guys today. Comment below, let me know what you thought. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. It's completely carbonized. Oh, gross. And it's all over my fingers. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters whose names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Remember, if you want to support this channel, click the links down in that description for Patreon. Join for a couple of bucks a month. We greatly appreciate it. Right below me will be the entire PrintFixFriday series where you can look at fails and me taking a look at them. We have a troll episode coming up here pretty soon because we're almost at 1 year. And right next to that will be my most recent business podcast. I think you guys liked it. I'll see you all down in those comments and in the next one. Take care.